here on Sundays. You were here on what day? Sunday or yesterday?
You were here?
Yeah.
Yesterday?
Sundays. Yeah, were you also here?
I was here on Sunday as well as on Monday.
Okay, good. I was gonna say, what were you doing? Did you get enough rest? Was it productive? Good start. Good start. I agree. Hopper's better than us. We should make it a shirt.
I spent 2
It sounds heavenly. You went to America? I'm from the capital. Yeah, it is. It is.
I did work yesterday, so I didn't do much. But on the weekend before, I had a housewarming of a friend. I went to on drinks with a friend. There was something else. Oh yeah, we actually hosted a dinner for friends of ours. That was fun. Yeah, I made salmon.
You did?
Yeah. To be honest, I think it should have been a bit longer, like 2 minutes more, but everybody was happy. It was tasted good, so salmon.
Yeah, right?
The easiest. I didn't expect it to be.
You did the right thing.
Very easy.
That means you can eat more later.
Yeah, and tomorrow I will go to the Trump trial
Oh, yeah?
and wait for the jury to come out.
Get a chance to get in tomorrow?
Okay.
I mean, like tomorrow will be overflow,
Yeah.
so I have to be there early. But Thursday I have a fixed, like a reserved seat in the actual
That's
one.
good.
But you know what? Catherine and I decided what we do for big winter travel. So that's half a year though. In half a year, we will go to Ivory Coast, Ghana, and I don't know how to pronounce this. Sao Tome.
Sao Tome.
Yeah.
Sao Tome and Principe.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I'm so excited. It will be really.
Yeah. What a way. I mean,
It's gone up. It took me a moment to notice.
you know, now it's so interesting.
Back in the days.
You've got to go see slave.
Yes, the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they have some German colonial history as well in the east. I know Togo is the land next to Ghana, but like there is a part of Ghana which is called Togoland, or it was called Togoland from German colonialism. Yeah, and that's also a part which is obviously very interesting.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this. And the good thing is, we found a flight via Casablanca, where we have like 14 hours in Casablanca.
You want to go to, you know, we
We have 14 hours, we will do it.
go there and have a drink.
I will absolutely agree. Exactly.
She's like,
Well done. I'm so sorry we pulled you away. You're very neutral, loyal. Sorry we pulled you away. Thank you for coming. I know from the other side of South Carolina. Good. Outside.
I was about to say it's Monday, but it's not even Monday. All right. I have a few things to share with you. And then our colleague and friend Juliette Touma will have a few more things to share with you from about UNRWA and what's going on in Gaza, and she'll be briefing you from Jordan. So let me start. First, I will start with a statement on the situation in Gaza. As you have seen, the Secretary General has condemned in the strongest terms the 26 May airstrikes by the Israeli Defense Forces on Rafah, which hit tents sheltering displaced people. The Secretary General is heartbroken by the killed and injured, including many small children. As he has said before, the horror and suffering must stop immediately. The Secretary General grieves for the over 36,000 Palestinians and some 1,500 Israelis killed in the relentless violence, including the gruesome acts of terror in Israel on 7th of October, the devastating Israeli assaults on Gaza, and the continuing indiscriminate rocket launches towards Israel from Gaza. The humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza is now compounded by the unconscionable prospects of a man-made famine. The Secretary General reiterates his demand for an immediate ceasefire and the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages. He recalls the recent orders of the International Court of Justice, which are binding and must be respected. The Secretary General calls on the Israeli authorities to allow and facilitate and enable the immediate, safe, and unhindered delivery of all humanitarian supplies and assistance to those in need, and all crossing points must be open in line with Security Council Resolution 2720. Humanitarian organizations must have full, rapid, safe, and unhindered humanitarian access to reach all civilians in need across Gaza in line with Resolution 2712. We must work expeditiously to restore security, dignity, and hope for all of the affected population. This will require urgent efforts to support and strengthen the new Palestinian government and its institutions, including for preparing the Palestinian Authority to reassume its responsibilities in Gaza. We must also move forward with tangible and irreversible steps to create a political horizon. The devastation and the misery of the past 7 months have reinforced the absolute need for Israelis, for Palestinians, for states in the region and the broader international community to take urgent steps that will enable the parties to re-engage on the long-delayed political path to achieve a two-state solution. The United Nations will continue to support all in such efforts. On the ground, our colleagues in the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tell us that the intensification of hostilities and issuance of evacuation orders have displaced more than 940,000 people from Rafah in the past 3 weeks, alongside 100,000 that have been displaced in northern Gaza. That's according to estimates by UNRWA and OCHA, and Juliette, I'm sure, will have a lot more. Attacks on Rafah have continued unabated, and civilians displaced by hostilities lack shelter, they lack food, they lack water, and other supplies essential to their human survival. Health facilities have continued to face dire shortages of fuel and medical supplies, while having to cope with a rising influx of casualties due to injuries and burns. Our humanitarian colleagues tell us that while the Karim Shalom crossing remains open in principle, it's extremely difficult for aid organizations to access from the Gaza side due to the hostilities, challenging logistical conditions, and complex coordination procedures. However, I can tell you that as of yesterday, 43 trucks, we were able to access 43 trucks at the Karim Shalom site. In addition, access constraints continue to hamper the delivery of life-saving humanitarian aid inside Gaza. Between the 1st and the 26th of May, 137 humanitarian aid missions to areas that require coordination across Gaza were facilitated by the Israeli authorities. 86 were impeded after getting green light or denied access to begin with, and 43 were canceled by the organizers, the humanitarian organizers. Moving up north, our peacekeeping colleagues in southern Lebanon report that the force commander and head of the peacekeeping mission there, General Aroldo Lazzaro, visited Sector West of the Blue Line over the weekend to assess the situation on the ground. He noted that the dedication and efforts of peacekeepers to de-escalate tensions, patrol, and support the Lebanese armed forces and local communities continue, despite over 7 months of exchanges of fire across the Blue Line. We reiterate the importance of returning to a cessation of hostilities under the framework of Security Council Resolution 1701 and to avoid any acts that may further escalate the existing tensions across the Blue Line. Moving to the People's Republic of Korea, I have a statement on that. The Secretary General strongly condemns the attempted launch of another military satellite using ballistic missile technology by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Any launch by the DPRK using ballistic missile technology is contrary to relevant Security Council resolutions. The Secretary General reiterates his call on the DPRK to fully comply with its international obligations under all relevant Security Council resolutions and to swiftly return to dialogue without precondition to achieve the goal of sustainable peace and the complete and verifiable denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Turning to the Secretary General, as you know, he is in Antigua and Barbuda taking part in the 4th Conference on Small Island Developing States. Today he spoke at an event on resource mobilization and said that while financing is the fuel of development, many small island developing states are running on empty. Too often, island nations are unable to make the investments they need in sustainable development, such as precious resources are diverted to recovery from disasters and to debt service. And when they turn to the global financial system for assistance, they come often empty-handed. He underscored that in the current form, the global financial architecture fails to deliver developing countries in general, small island states in particular. He outlined 3 steps to change this, which include relieving the burden of debt for these countries, transforming lending practices, and increasing inclusivity across international financial institutions. Later today, the Secretary General will have conversations with the Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, on a call to action for small islands and the Bridgetown Initiative. As you will have seen yesterday, he spoke at the opening conference, said the international community has a duty to support small island developing states, which have been the world's conscience on the climate crisis. The idea of an entire island state could become collateral damage for profiteering by the fossil fuel industry, he said, or competition between major economies is simply obscene. He told small island leaders that we need to hear their fierce voices now more than ever. All of the material he did over the weekend we shared with you. He will be on his way back to New York very shortly. Quick note on Syria. You will have seen the 8th edition of the conference entitled Supporting the Future of Syria and the Region took place in Brussels yesterday. In a video message, the Secretary General stressed that 3 in every 4 people in Syria, that's nearly 17 million human beings, need humanitarian assistance this year, and that 5.6 million Syrian men, women, and children remain refugees in Egypt, Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, Turkey, across Europe and beyond. We have also the Director for Coordination of OCHA, Ramesh Rajasingham, also addressed the conference. We've shared those remarks with you. And also just a programming note that Geir Pedersen, the Special Envoy for Syria, will be in New York on Thursday to brief the Security Council. And he has promised to answer each and every one of your questions at the stakeout, or at least a few. What? Well, you will have somebody else here as well. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Anyway, but he will be at the stakeout, He will answer your questions. Turning to Ukraine, our humanitarian coordinator in Ukraine, Denise Brown, visited Kharkiv over the weekend. That was following the deadly attack on a shopping mall on Saturday, an attack which she strongly condemned. The attack caused massive fire, making it difficult for rescue services to work. Local authorities report that at least 18 civilians were killed, including a child, and 48 more were injured. On the same day, another strike in Kharkiv city resulted in 25 civilian casualties and damage to civilian infrastructure. That's what local authorities are telling us. Humanitarian workers, first responders provided first aid, psychosocial support, and emergency assistance to affected people. These deadly attacks come on top of intensified fighting in the border areas of the Kharkiv region with the Russian Federation, which, as we have mentioned, have triggered displacement over the last 2 weeks. Humanitarian partners continue to support people fleeing hostilities. Over 10,000 people received immediate aid at the transit center in Kharkiv city. That includes food, water, clothes, mattresses, as well as cash support. Turning to a humanitarian disaster in the Pacific, and that's in Papua New Guinea. You will have seen that over the weekend, the Secretary General expresses deep sadness at the reported loss of hundreds of lives in a massive landslide in Papua New Guinea. He extended his heartfelt condolences to the families and the victims and expressed his solidarity with the people and government of Papua New Guinea. We, along with our partners, are supporting the government's response efforts and stand ready to do more. The government has requested international assistance, and we are coordinating the response efforts of all partners on the ground. Immediate needs include clean water, food, clothing, shelter items, kitchen utensils, medicine, and hygiene kits. We, along with our partners in coordination with local emergency teams, are going to provide relief supplies, including emergency health kits, tents, psychosocial supports, and hygiene kits. Moving to the African continent, a quick update from South Sudan, where our peacekeeping colleagues there tell us about the successful conclusion of a mobile court deployed in Mayom County in Unity State. Over 6 weeks, this collaborative effort, supported by the mission there and the embassies of Norway, handled 31 cases, resulting in 24 convictions and the release of 22 prisoners. Several cases heard by the court involved sexual and gender-based violence, underscoring the significance of addressing such crimes. In remote regions such as Mayom, which have lacked formal judiciary since the nation's independence, mobile courts provide much-needed access to justice. A similar court is expected to deploy in Tonj in Warrap State in a few weeks. And in neighboring Sudan, our colleagues at OCHA tell us that hundreds of thousands of civilians in Al-Fashir in North Darfur are facing an increasingly dire humanitarian situation. Many parts of the city have been left without electricity or water. A growing proportion of the population has limited access to necessities and essential services, including food and health care. We're also receiving deeply worrying reports that medical facilities, displacement camps, and critical civilian infrastructure have been impacted by the hostilities. Our friends at the International Organization for Migration estimate that the conflict has displaced nearly 58,000 people from Al-Fashir since April 1st. Many more people, including children and elderly people, are unable or being prevented from moving to safer areas. And back here, the Security Council held an open debate on the role of women and young people in maintaining peace and security. Rosemary DiCarlo, Undersecretary General for Political and Peace-Building Affairs, briefed the Council, saying that gender equality and recognizing aspirations of young people are essential for sustainable peace and security around the world. She spoke about her recent visit to Afghanistan, where women and girls in Kabul told her about their dreams, mainly to get the same education as men and equal employment opportunities. For her part, Sima Bahus underscored that women and girls face a double discrimination for their gender and their age. This has intensified during conflicts. And in Bangladesh, prior to the anticipated landfall of a cyclone in the southern parts of Bangladesh, WFP has swiftly dispatched cash assistance to families most at risk. A total of 30,000 families, it's about 150,000 people, received assistance. This is part of one of WFP's flagship program entitled Anticipatory Action, Act Before the Incident. And Abdelhamid, you were asking about Thursday. On Thursday, we will be observing International Day of UN Peacekeepers. Today, some 76,000 women and men are serving in 11 conflict zones across Africa, Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. The day will be marked here with a few events. The Secretary General will lay a wreath to honor all UN peacekeepers who have lost their lives since 1948. He will also preside over a ceremony in the Trusteeship Council, during which the Dag Hammarskjöld medals will be awarded posthumously to 64 military, police, and civilian peacekeepers who lost their lives serving under the UN flag, including 61 who died last year. Also on Thursday, the Secretary General will present the 2023 Military Gender Advocate of the Year Award to Major Radhika Sen, military officer from India, who served with the peacekeepers in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And on Thursday, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, the head of UN peacekeeping, will be here in this seat, which he had reserved before Geir Pedersen, to answer your questions. I see Juliette's face on the screen, but I will take some questions before. Edith.
Thank you, Steph. In relation to the Israeli airstrike that hit the tent camp in Gaza, has the Secretary General made any phone calls to significant people in the Middle East and to anyone in the Biden administration?
You know, unfortunately, it's my bad. I didn't see his call list this morning. I do know that our colleagues in the region have all been in touch with the relevant parties.
And as a follow-up to what you said about the Secretary General's appeal to have the Palestinian Authority restored to power in Gaza. What specifically is the United Nations doing to try and make this happen?
Well, this will have, I mean, at some point, this conflict will end. We hope it'll end sooner rather than later. And there will be at some point a need for the Palestinian Authority to return to Gaza. And frankly, the issue of political reconciliation within the Palestinian Authority and the Palestinian lands is something we have been working on for quite some time. And part of that is doing whatever we can to support and help capacity build the Palestinian institutions. Amélie, then Benno.
Thanks, Steph. You mentioned the ICJ ruling and the fact that it is binding, but obviously it's been ignored. It's not the first time in high-profile ruling, like for Ukraine. How worried is the Secretary General that it could become a habit from member states to disregard the rulings of the ICJ, and how does that undermine the credibility of the top UN court?
I think you're stating facts, right? It is, I think, to anyone who observes the international landscape over the last few years, we have seen a breakdown of international law, of respect for international law, respect of international humanitarian law, respect for human rights. The member states created this court when they created the charter, when they signed on to it. It is, we do expect member states to abide by the orders of the International Court of Justice. Benno.
Thank you, Steph. About Gaza and the SG's condemnations yesterday and today, I know you said it often that you use the language that he used, but normally you stick to your language and it's consistent. Yesterday, the SG tweeted he condemns Israel's actions. Today, you talk passively about the airstrikes and you're not mentioning directly the IDF in that
I think
context.
I did in what I just, in the words that I just used in the briefing. Yeah,
not in the first three sentences. I mean, like,
I think
So-
those were the words that came out of my mouth. I said, talked about the airstrikes by the Israeli Defense Force. Those were
So-
exactly what I said.
The Secretary General has condemned in the strongest terms on the 26 May airstrikes on Rafah, hitting tents sheltering displaced people.
I just said it. I mean, you could check the tape.
Okay.
Deji, then Mike.
Yeah, follow up. Obviously, we heard the condemnation from the Secretary General on the May 26th attack. After that, Prime Minister Netanyahu said it's a tragic mistake. Yet today, it's been reported there's new, fresh air attacks by Israeli air targeted in Al-Mawasi, which killed 21 people. Does the Secretary General have anything to say on the new attack?
We want this to stop, right? Whether and that applies to today, yesterday, the day before. We have been very consistent in our call for a ceasefire, for the release of the hostages, for greater humanitarian access.
Does the Secretary General believe there should be consequence or responsibility on this kind of
There will
actions?
need to be, like in any conflict, there will need to be
But
accountability.
does he have the confidence that there will be responsibility?
At some point, there will need to be accountability. That goes beyond the institutions that he directly controls.
Okay, let me switch the topic to the humanitarian aid. We know that there's incident happened to the floating dock that might have impact some of the humanitarian deliveries. How's the delivery from the floating dock by WFP now?
I didn't get an update today, but again, I mean, I think it shows what we're extremely grateful for the U.S. having built this floating pier, which is an additional route. It cannot replace opening up of all the crossings, and we see it. I mean, you saw the vulnerability not only in terms of security but in terms of safety having to do with this. So, just repeating what we've already said.
Then back to my question I have asked. $320 million for a floating dock that operates less than 2 weeks and need to be repaired. Do you think there should be a better way to spend those money? I know those
it's
are
not for us.
UN money.
It's not the UN's.
I know
it's not the UN's money. If it brought in, and I think the last number I had at the end of last week was 97 trucks that went in. That's 97 trucks of aid that people will receive, right? More than they would have received if the floating dock had not been created. But it's just it's just a small add to what we actually need. Mike.
Sir, just to be clear, the Secretary General is calling for the removal of Hamas from power in Gaza. Is that correct?
What the Secretary General has called for, and this goes back before, is for a return of the Palestinian Authority to Gaza.
Has the UN run that proposition by Hamas? I mean, have you talked about the long term with Hamas?
The Palestinian Authority is what we recognize as our counterpart in terms of the Palestinian people, and I think the Secretary General's position is well known to all.
In terms of the capacity building, the institutional building, the UN has used those phrases, the US has used those phrases. They're very general, very abstract. What does that mean in practice in getting the Palestinian Authority actually prepared to resume responsibility?
That means offering the help that they ask for, that they need in terms
what have they been asking for?
Of assistance in terms of line assistance to line ministries, whatever we can help with. It also means that the Israeli government should ensure that the tax receipts they collect on behalf of the Palestinian Authority should be turned over to the Palestinian Authority. And I can give you more details on those kind of granular capacity building.
Thank you.
Margaret Bashir. Sorry, Michelle.
Uh,
Wow.
She's in a mood today,
Yeah.
Steph. Has the Secretary General spoken to anyone in Israel about this bill that the Knesset is going to have a preliminary vote on tomorrow that would name UNRWA a terrorist organization if it's adopted? And how would this affect relations with the United Nations? I mean, how can one of your agencies
Well,
have this designation?
it's not the Secretary General's MO to get involved in what is the legislative process. We understand it's a bill. A lot of governments have bill floating around. I think it should be clear to all the Secretary General's unconditional and unwavering support for UNRWA, and his the fact that he's underscored over and over again the critical role that it plays.
Do you have some sort of contingency planning going on for this? Because I don't see...
There is no alternative to UNRWA.
Right, but if they
So
say you can't
there's
be
no
there...
alternative to UNRWA. If UNRWA no longer is able to operate in Gaza or the occupied West Bank, the Israeli authorities, as the occupying power, will have to take responsibility for a lot of those operations.
And are you concerned that their facilities would become military targets because they
Of
would
course,
be,
and we've seen the demonstrations and attacks on UNRWA facilities in Jerusalem. You may return the mic to Michelle, and then we'll go to Abdelhamid.
Thanks, Steph. Just following up, you said 43 trucks entered through Kerem Shalom yesterday.
Yes,
That's correct.
I mean, it's correct in terms that I said it, and I hope it is also correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just because it's not the website, the wheels have fallen off the website, so to speak. But just wanted to sort of get your UN assessment on this new agreement where aid from Egypt will enter through Kerem Shalom. Is that working?
Look, every little bit helps, but sometimes I feel we're just creating workarounds and additional workarounds to work around the reality on the ground, which is that the conflict and the fighting is continuing. The best solution is for a humanitarian ceasefire. Abdelhamid.
Thank you, Stefan. Yesterday there was exchange of fire between Israelis and Egyptians. One Egyptian was killed and another was wounded. Do you have any comment on that?
My understanding, at least from reading the media, is that this is being dealt with on a bilateral basis.
Okay, my second question about recognizing Palestine by some European countries. 3 of them already did that. Does the Secretary General welcome these developments that will wait in favor of peace in the Middle East?
These, I think the question was already asked. These are bilateral issues. Governments, states recognize each other on a regular basis. For the Secretary General, he will continue to work towards a two-state solution. Yeah, go ahead.
One more? Okay. Isn't the Secretary General frustrated with the behavior of a rogue state like Israel, defying every call, the ICJ, the UNRWA, the appeals by every humanitarian organization, and yet they're continuing with their massacre?
I think reading or listening to what I've just read at the beginning, one could detect the Secretary General's frustration at the situation as a whole and the continuing disregard of human life. Ahmed, then Dennis, sorry.
Thank you, Steph. With regard to the evolving situation in Gaza and the occupied territories, does the Secretary General have any ideas or strategy to bring international accountability, since it is a threat to the very existence of this organization in the face of a defiant state that its representative shredded the UN Charter in front of all member states and on the air for the whole world to see?
Say again.
Does the Secretary General have any ideas or strategy or an initiative to bring international accountability to the situation, since this is hitting at the core of the United Nations and the purpose of its existence?
there are already multiple institutions that member states have created that can help us bring accountability to conflict. We hope that those institutions are respected. Dennis.
I want to ask about a different topic. So on Monday, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, Sergei Lavrov, told that Taliban represents real power in Afghanistan and their possible exclusion from list of terrorist organizations reflects recognition of reality. So does UNSG think that the time has come to change the course of relation with de facto Afghan authorities, considering the fact that sanctions affect the social economic situation in Afghanistan?
Look, we continue on the same path in terms of Afghanistan, which is engaging with the de facto authorities because they are the de facto authorities in Afghanistan. We also continue to push them constantly and continuously on the issue of the rights of women and girls, which are their rights to have, which they are being denied on a daily basis, almost across the board. We continue to push for greater humanitarian assistance to the people of Afghanistan who have suffered and who continue to suffer. The Secretary General, as you will recall, we've invited envoys on Afghanistan to attend a meeting in Doha at the end of this month in order to bring some clarity and consistency to the way the world deals with the situation in Afghanistan while continuing to put human rights of women and girls at the forefront. Okay. All right. I won't ask twice. Sorry?
I may have missed it. What's the date of that meeting?
I think 29th June, May. Nabil, then we'll go to Juliette, who's eager to speak to you.
Yeah, maybe quick question,
yeah.
Maybe answer. Has the SG had any contact with Mr. Donald Trump or his campaign?
No. On that note, Juliette, if we could put our guest on the screen, we're delighted to be joined by our friend Juliette Touma, who is briefing us from Amman. Juliette, please, I don't know if you want to say a few words and then we'll take some questions.
Steph, hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Perfect.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me and good to see everyone. Yes, I'll say just a few words, operational update on what's happening in Gaza and what we've been getting from our colleagues there. And then, yes, for sure, we'll take some questions. An update on the displacement over the past 3 weeks. So since the 6th of May, according to UNRWA, more than 1 million people have fled Rafah. The displacement continues today. This caseload of people that has been recently displaced, it's been displaced several times already. According to our teams on the ground, heavy bombardment continued overnight in the area, including in Tal Sultan, that's north of Rafah, where the UN main offices, including the UNRWA offices, are in Gaza. And this is the center of operations. Most of our staff could not make it to work today. They were packing and moving. People are absolutely terrified. A lot of people are fleeing to Al-Mawasi, and they're also fleeing to the middle areas, including to Deir al-Balah. These are already, as you may know, crammed and crowded areas. On the humanitarian supplies, an update on the overall number of trucks. Just over 200 trucks with humanitarian supplies have been picked up in the last 3 weeks. This is, of course, a drop in the ocean amid people's humanitarian needs as they continue to immensely grow. this very, very small number of trucks that has been picked up is due to several factors. One is the heavy movement restrictions that the Israeli authorities continue to impose on the humanitarian community. The ongoing Israeli forces airstrikes and the recent expansion of the military operation in the area, and the recent launch of rockets by Hamas, delays and limitations in general on the routes that can be used by the humanitarian teams, including UNRWA, and that the fuel coming in is by far not enough to support the humanitarian operation in Gaza. We are also running out at UNRWA of medical supplies and basic medicines due to the shortages of humanitarian deliveries. On the general situation, our teams reported that there's very little to no electricity in Rafah and very patchy internet connection. The telecommunications network continues to be interrupted. The UNRWA Commissioner General has just issued a statement on his official X account, previously known as Twitter, where he described the situation in Gaza as, quote, an endless horror show, except it's real, end of quote. He added, 2 million people are living in a hellhole. This is Gaza at the world's watch, end of quote. The teams today said that the aftermath of the harrowing attack on Sunday is huge. According to some international medical sources that our teams spoke to, at least 200 people were killed in that attack, among them women and children. The attack added to the general fear of death. People are seeing so much death around them. A colleague who recently returned from Gaza told me today, people are dying inside. Everywhere they look, there is death, and it is as if people have accepted that death is their fate. One colleague who has moved this morning from Rafah to Al-Mawasi after debating for weeks asked me, what's the point of moving yet again if I'm going to be killed anyway? It is a chance here to pay tribute to all our UNRWA team members who have been killed since the war began. There are 192 of them to date. One colleague killed is one colleague too many, and the agency, UNRWA, will never be the same without them. In closing, UNRWA reiterates the call of the UN Secretary General for an immediate ceasefire and the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages to end the suffering of civilians. We also echo the SG's dismay by the lack of the implementation of the recent order of the International Court of Justice regarding Rafah. These decisions are binding. Military operation in Rafah must immediately end, and the flow of humanitarian assistance into Gaza must improve without further delay. Steph, thank you, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. We'll start with Edie.
Thank you very much, Juliette, on behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association. Thank you for doing this briefing. My name is Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. First, could you give us some more details on where you just said that at least 200 people had been killed in the Israeli airstrike in Gaza yesterday? And could you also tell us what UNRWA's expectations are for this legislation that's being debated in Israel tomorrow, I believe?
Great, thanks, Edith, and good to see you and hear you. Look, the 200 people killed, that came from the international aid organization Medical Aid for the Palestinian, MAP UK, that came from them this afternoon. On the bill, exactly what Steph said, I would also say that our Commissioner General has described this bill as outrageous.
All right, Nabil?
Hi, Juliette. This is Nabil Abisab, Al Arabi TV station correspondent. Two questions. it seems that there are a lot of funding coming from maybe European countries or other countries that target only certain projects, or maybe limited to certain areas, or I don't know what kind of services they target. But have you received this kind of funding that does not or do not include Gaza? Or do you feel that Gaza is now excluded from many funding coming from certain governments?
No, we have not. Nabil, nice to see you. Look, most of the donors who have suspended the funding to UNRWA back in January have now returned, apart from two countries, that is the United States and the United Kingdom, I beg your pardon. And the funding that comes to UNRWA also includes funding to our operations in Gaza. We are not at all out of the woods, of course, and it is very, very hard for us to know what will happen beyond the end of June with regards to the operations across the region of the agency, including those in Gaza.
And my second question is about Ain al-Hilwi camp in Lebanon. What's the situation there? Are you able to provide services as usual or the way you used to do in Ain al-Hilwi? Because there was a problem with the political committee, I think, in the camp between UNRWA and some parties in the camp.
Yeah, thanks, Nabil. I have just returned from Beirut last night, where I was accompanying the UNRWA Commissioner General on a trip there. We have had some disruption in the service delivery of the UNRWA services in the camp. We have also had a sit-in outside our compound in Beirut, where members of the Palestinian factions have closed our offices in Beirut for the past 6 weeks. Fortunately, the office has now reopened and the services have largely resumed.
Michelle Nichols.
Thanks, Juliette. Michelle Nichols from Reuters. Sorry, just to clarify again, you said that MAPS has said nearly 200 or around 200 were killed in the Israeli strikes in Rafah on Sunday. That's right?
Yes, this is according to Medical Aid for Palestinians, yes.
Okay, great, thank you. And
okay.
What can you tell us about the incident today that appears to have killed more than 20 people? What does UNRWA know about that? And then, you know, what's left to distribute at the moment in terms of aid, given there's so little getting in? Thank you.
Which incident, Michelle, today? Which one are you referring to?
I think it was in...
I think a couple.
Yeah, Al-Mawasi. There was about 21, I think, was the last test though.
Yes, we've only seen reports on Al-Mawasi that we haven't been able to confirm. But to say that these reports are testament to the fact that no place is safe in Gaza, that no one is safe in Gaza, that no one is spared in Gaza, that there is certainly no so-called quote-unquote humanitarian or safe zone in Gaza. If we get more information on Mawasi, Michelle, we will send an update. And the second question is on what's left to distribute. Not much. I mean, we've run out of food very early on when the military operation started. We're getting very, very, very little humanitarian supplies into Gaza. And I think in the briefing I covered why we're not able to pick up those humanitarian supplies. And we're running out of medicines in UNRWA clinics and pharmacies. And in just over 3 weeks to the south of Gaza, and I think it's important to say just to the south of Gaza, the UN has been able to pick up just over 200 trucks, which is not at all enough, because normally what Gaza needs is 500 trucks, and it should be a combination of commercial supplies and humanitarian supplies. So what we've got right now is in just over 3 weeks is 200, just over 200. We have this dashboard that we track the data on the trucks that you're welcome to consult. It's on the UNRWA website.
And sorry, just one last quick follow-up. Egypt said they didn't want to reopen Rafah because it was too dangerous for humanitarians on the Gaza side. Does UNRWA agree with that?
Look, what I do know is that the Rafah crossing has not opened yet, and those very, very little amounts of humanitarian supplies are only coming via the Kerem Abu Salem or Kerem Shalom crossing that connects Israel with southern Gaza.
Okay, Judeshi?
Hi, Juliette. This is Deju Xu with China Central Television. Just now you said the Commissioner General of UNRWA, when he described the Knesset move, he said it's outrageous. Can you elaborate why UNRWA think that's outrageous? In what way that would impact the operation of UNRWA? And second, you just mentioned in about 3 weeks, there are just over 200 trucks get into Rafah, get into Gaza. The UNRWA has already suspended its operation in Rafah's area. Do you feel like there might be more suspensions for UNRWA on its humanitarian operations? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, and good to see you again. Look, we have not suspended our operations, just to be accurate. We have suspended the food distribution in southern Gaza because we simply ran out of stuff to give out to people, food stuff, right? But we have continued our operations. Our operations are ongoing. We continue to provide primary health care as one example to the communities in need. We have opened mobile clinics in places like Al-Mawasi, also to respond to the needs of the population in that area. So we have not suspended our operations. What we are saying, however, is that the humanitarian space is shrinking by the hour, by the day, because of all these restrictions that are imposed on the humanitarian community. On the Commissioner General describing the decision outrageous is because this is the last straw in a series of accusations, allegations, outrageous in that sense, against the agency, which is the beating heart and the backbone of the humanitarian operation in Gaza, which is an agency that has been for more than 7 decades providing human development services to one of the most deprived communities in the world right now, the Palestine refugees. So this is why he called it outrageous. And I can send you also the transcript from the briefing, the press briefing that he did in Beirut yesterday. There's also a video I can send to the colleagues in the spokesperson's office if you'd like to know more.
Thank you very much.
Abdulhamid Sam.
Thank you, Juliette. This is Abdulhamid Siam of the Arabic daily Al-Quds Al-Arabi. First, if you can tell us more about the situation in Jabalia refugee camps. Do you have people there trying to distribute anything? And if you can give us more details about the latest development in Jabalia refugee camp.
Okay, thanks, Abdulhamid, and good to see you as ever. Look, the latest that we have on Jabalia is that since the 6th of May, when there was also further expansion of the Israeli military operation in the area, is that there's give or take 100,000 people who were forced to be displaced in Jabalia. And UNRWA has teams everywhere across the Gaza Strip, including in Jabalia camp, but obviously with the recent expansion of the military operation, the restrictions and ability for our staff to deliver humanitarian assistance in the area is very, very limited, and we also have very little supplies that humanitarian supplies that come into northern Gaza. You see the Israeli authorities have banned UNRWA in March from sending humanitarian convoys to northern Gaza. The last time that UNRWA was able itself to deliver a humanitarian convoy with food to Gaza was on the 29th of January. That was 4 months ago.
Thank you. Regarding the countries that resumed funding for UNRWA, you said just only 2 did not resume, the UK and the US. How did you manage with is there big deficit now in the budget? Can you sustain yourself to the end of the year, or still large shortages in the budget?
We're only able so far to operate until the end of June. It is very, very difficult for us to have any forecast on what's going to happen beyond the end of June.
Taking into account that 14 countries resumed funding, that means they didn't believe in the allegations. So the allegations Israel launched against UNRWA had been proven untrue, yet Israel is going too far to declare UNRWA as a terrorist organization. Can you talk about this paradox?
What is the question, Abdulhamid?
The question, as many, the world is believing that UNRWA is innocent of all these allegations, yet Israel is going too far to accuse UNRWA of being a terrorist organization. Can you address this dichotomy?
I think you need to ask the member states and the donors why they have resumed their funding to UNRWA. That's a question that you need to ask to the donor countries. I also take a chance to say that there were several countries who have come forward who have not been donors to the agency before. That also includes countries from the region, like most recently Iraq and Algeria. And we've also seen huge global solidarity from individuals from around the world that came forward in support of UNRWA. So only since the war began, we have received over $120 million from private donors and individuals.
Okay, Kristen Salome.
Thank you. Kristen from Al Jazeera English. You mentioned an UNRWA facility was struck over the weekend. Can you give more details on that? And given what's happening in the Knesset, do you feel like UNRWA is being directly targeted by Israel? Can you tell us what was in that facility? Was it being used? And how many facilities have been hit in the last week maybe or month?
Yes, thanks so much. I'm not sure I said that another facility was hit on the weekend. I think what I referred to is the attack that happened on Sunday that was quite close to an UNRWA facility. And that is the logistics base that UNRWA has in the area. So the facility was not hit on Sunday. But just to answer your question on the number of facilities that have been hit since the beginning of the war, it's over 160 facilities of UNRWA that have been hit since the war began. Some were directly hit, some were hit more than once, and overall there have been over 450 people who were killed. They were sheltering in UNRWA facilities when these hits have taken place. On the Knesset bill, like I said, this is the last straw, the last attempt in a number of attempts over the past months to dismantle UNRWA. UNRWA is the backbone of the humanitarian operation in Gaza, and it provides human development services to Palestine refugees around the region, including over 500,000 boys and girls that go to UNRWA schools.
Okay.